Welcome to NFL Daily, where we're all just trying to be the face of the network. I'm Gregg Rosenthal, and yeah, that title's taken at NFL Network by Rich Eisen, and then maybe like 6 other guys. Steve Weiss, my co-host, would be one of them. But my guest has that title. It's Nick Wright.
No, I
don't. You don't want that?
It's been foisted upon me by some charlatans on the internet. Listen, I know you don't like faff to start the show. Okay. So you can set a 60-second clock here. There's just a couple things I want to say. One is I went through my email last night. I couldn't find it. I really think the first time you came on one of my radio shows was 16 years ago. I honestly believe that. And like, you were one of my go-to guys I would call, and you would very kindly come on, even though I was like, you were getting nothing out of it. And I've never been able to return the favor. So this is a real treat for me. That's point number one. Point number two, I'm a long-time Gregg Rosenthal listener and fan. Loved the old pod, and I have not missed an episode of this one. And in fact, the only one I haven't listened to in its entirety is Wednesdays, because when we are recording Thursday, I haven't had time yet to listen to the whole thing, but I heard the beginning of it. You and another guy I used to have come on the radio show all the time, Evan Silva. And the last point is this, and this is important. You are one of 3 people. The other 2 will remain nameless. That way everyone can think they're in that group that hears this, who, when they say something that I vehemently disagree with in the NFL, I reconsider my opinion. Everyone else, I just think they're wrong and I'm right. You and 2 other people, I'm like, well, maybe I need to look at it again. So thank you for having me on.
Well, that is all making me uncomfortable. I now just want to spend the show guessing who the other 2 are. Maybe
one of
Mina?
them's Barnwell.
Okay. I booked Barnwell in a big spot. He's going to do our TNF recap week 2. So there's a little.
The third used to be Mina, but now she's my sworn rival. So now it's got to be someone. So again, you have to leave a spot like that open. That way, anyone that hears it can't be offended. They're like, wait, why am I not on that list? It's like, no. You were the missing person. Oh, last thing. I do a podcast in addition to the TV show with my son, Demonze. My son's quite a bit older than yours. I was getting to that.
You've just taken over.
No, I was just going to say it because you and Walker, I think one day are going to do a pod together. I hear his takes. His picks sometimes are a little chalky, a little square, but I like it. So that's all. But go ahead. It's your show.
I appreciate that all. I am now reminded of a great show. I don't know if it was you or Adam Lefko who was on with Bomani, but he noticed on his podcast, when you have another host on the podcast, they just start hosting.
Yes.
And that's what Nick's done to me. No, I love it. I love it. And I'm glad actually. And yeah, Nick is, of course, the host of First Things First on FS1. That's every day at noon Pacific, 3 Eastern. I like to list Pacific first. That's the important people. And then, what's right? I really was going to mention that you co-host a podcast with your son, Demonze, and that's fantastic. That is life goals. And so that's What's Right with Nick Wright. They just did the over-unders, all 32 teams. I'm jealous of that. Now it's like, okay, next year I want to do all 32 teams. That would be fun. And you managed to jam it into an hour. So you got to check out that show. And at the risk of getting too heavy on top here, I'm glad you brought up the radio thing. And maybe you don't remember this, but I actually do remember that. I think the last time I ever was supposed to be on your show, I canceled at the last second, like 2 minutes before I was supposed to be on. And I remember where I was. I was in the newsroom in Culver City when I was in middle management hell. It was like a 5-year period where I realized I had to get out of this job. And I actually remembered it. And I flaked on you at the last second. And I hate doing that to radio hosts. And at least in my head, that was the last time I ever was going to be on. I was like, oh, now I got on that guy's list. And then what happened? He ended up becoming a big national superstar.
No, listen, anybody that ever comes on for free out of the kindness of their own heart, I never get upset with the one rare exception of a friend of mine, so I can now say it. Shams Charania was once mid-interview with me on Mad Dog Sports Radio. Mid-interview. And he's like, oh my God, I'm sorry, I have to go, breaking news. And I'm like, oh, this is exciting. He's going to break major news. And then I check 30 seconds later, he tweets out that some second-round pick signed a 2-way contract. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Like, you got to be kidding me. That is what took precedent. That's the only one that I hold the grudge. Yours, not at all.
Those insiders are different. We had Ian Rappaport. He's done that to us, did that on our old show to us in the past. All right, we're going to get to a lot today. We'll get to Nick, of course, has been blessed to be a fan of the Chiefs, so we'll get to them at some point in this program, I'm sure, and of Carlos Alcaraz. He was at the U.S. Open. We'll get to that, but I have a structure here, which we don't do in every show. It's an AFC preview. We're going to try to get a lot in. We're going to get our 7 AFC seeds by the end of this, but I'm just going to throw out a few categories to start. The first one is just a team that's favored to make the playoffs rather, a team that's not favored to make the playoffs that will make the playoffs. So first I'm going to tell you who is favored just in Vegas. Chiefs, Ravens, Bills, Texans, Bengals, Jets. And then the last one, I was a little surprised, is the Dolphins are the favored to be the 7th seed. So who is a team that is not favored to make the playoffs you would pick?
The Jags.
Okay.
To me, there's 2, and they're kind of...
I had 2 as well, and Jags were one of them, yeah.
Jags, Chargers.
Dang, those are my 2 as well.
But I think we'll maybe have different teams out. Now, neither of those are that bold, I think if we were to go down playoff odds, Jags, Chargers are probably 8, 9, or 9, 8 and 10. They're close. It's not picking the Patriots or the Titans, the real low teams. But my premise, as you'll see throughout the show in the AFC, is that I think there's so many excellent quarterbacks that is going to carry the day. Because if you don't have an excellent quarterback in your 13 conference games a year, you're going to be, or I guess 12 conference games a year, you're going to be at such a structural disadvantage that I'm still a Trevor Lawrence believer. There is in one version of history, Trevor Lawrence, after a bad rookie season, had an awesome second year, one of the greatest playoff comebacks ever, and then was playing on Monday Night Football at 8-3 to be the 1 seed and got hurt, and the season went to hell. That's how I view it. Everyone else seems to view it as they fell apart. And yes, he doesn't seem to do well in the rain, which is unfortunate when you play your games in Jacksonville and in London. And he does have a bit of a fumbling issue, but I still believe in Trevor. And your show is part of the reason I've been convinced on the Chargers, is you've just had so many people make the point of the year 1 bump for Harbaugh everywhere he's gone. And so, the Herbert injury concerns me, but those are my 2.
Yeah, Chargers were for me. I did not expect this. Jaguars, I debated between those 2. It was just a process of elimination. Browns. No, I just don't expect the defense to be as good. They got too many problems.
They might have a bottom 3 quarterback situation in the AFC.
It's a problem. They have backups. We'll see if they trade one of them. But Steelers maybe go. If I had done this in June, Steelers might have been that team. But just it's too messy. And then the other teams are too far away. The Chargers, I feel like people are predicting them to be terrible this year. And yeah, I'm also someone that doesn't try to make it too complicated before the season. I'm usually a little bolder. I think I will be with the NFC. But I would rather just bet on a coach, a quarterback, and an offensive line, and a defensive scheme to raise you to just be average. So Mina and I disagree vehemently on this. She thinks they're going to be trash. We have something on the line here. She thinks their defense is going to truly be trash, and she just doesn't see it.
So here's the sneaky thing about the Chargers. When it comes to the AFC West and projections, there's 2 things that I think people know one of them and are kind of maybe know the other, but haven't thought about it. The Chargers, despite being in a division with the Raiders and Broncos, have the last place schedule. And that is such an edge. And amazingly, the Raiders have a 2nd place schedule this year. So anyone wanting to be bullish on the Raiders did themselves no favors by beating the Chiefs on Christmas, and that, it's actually the last game the Chiefs have lost, so it's not that bad. But all of a sudden they have a 2nd place schedule, so that makes me much more bullish on the Chargers than otherwise.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because sometimes people overrate that last place schedule. It's like it used to just be 2 games,
but
difference.
Now it's 3.
Now it's 3 in the NFC. But it also depends which NFC and which happen to be the last place team. For the Chargers this year, here's the 3 extra games: Pats, Titans, Cardinals. That's beautiful. I'm with you.
That's unbelievable. And if you think about the Raiders, sorry to interrupt you, that means for the Raiders, it's in the place of the Pats, it's the Dolphins. In place of the Cardinals, it's the Rams. And in place of the Titans, it would be the Jags, right? I think they finished second, or the Colts. It's the Colts there because they played. But regardless, like, that's a huge difference. It's a huge difference.
It really is. I think people overrate that sometimes, not this time. So I'm into that. All right, I'm on a team that is favored to make the playoffs. That won't. And I mentioned Chiefs, Ravens, Bills, Texans, Bengals, Jets, Dolphins.
So there's obviously, since I have 2 in, I have to have 2 out. But I'll give you the one that I'm most confident in. The Jets are not going to be good. I
love it.
I don't understand. This is one of those things where I'm like, oh, this is a smart person whose opinion I respect. I wonder why they're so wrong about this. And there's a lot with the Jets. They're favored to win the division. Usually to win the division, you have to go at least 4-2 or 5-1 in the division. If the Jets go 4-2 in the division, Robert Saleh will have doubled his career division wins. He's 4-14. They have an offensive coordinator that they tried to shadow replace because they thought he was so bad, and they were too incompetent to do that. And even if we were to just pretend that Aaron Rodgers didn't tear his Achilles, let's just pretend last year, instead of being out with a torn Achilles, he was out because he was canvassing for RFK Jr. Fine. Then I'd still be like, well, his last season before that, he wasn't good. And people are like, no, he just wasn't good by Aaron Rodgers standards, but he was good by NFL standards. No, he wasn't. Look it up.
Yeah.
He was league average in everything. Well, who could have won with that team? I don't know. Jordan Love played pretty well. And in the last game of relevance that Aaron Rodgers played, he was at home against a team he had owned forever, played one of his worst games of the year, and threw the game away at the end. So that guy is all of a sudden going to be the connective tissue and the best, not the best, but a very good quarterback. Like, it's people, everyone who doesn't believe in the Jets says, well, injuries could kill him. Obviously, that's true. I think even healthy, they have average quarterback play this year.
I think you might be right, and they're on my list too. They're one of those teams that, again, if I did this earlier, I agree with everything you just said about Rodgers and the Jets, and I do this thing that I know I'm a hater, basically. I'm a little biased against the Jets, so I almost try to like pretend I'm not and make the case for them in the end. But when it comes down to it, I don't believe in them. They have so many aspects of the team, even if you take away Rodgers, and I'm with you. I'd start with Rodgers. But who's their second best defensive lineman after Leonard Williams? Robert Saleh counts on a great defensive line to help him. They were counting on Hassan Reddick. I don't know how that's going to happen, but at this point, I'd almost be surprised if he plays with them. Jermaine Johnson is maybe their second best. They're counting on Javon Kinlaw, like Tack McKinley's in the mix. So there's so many ifs with this team on their offensive line, their defensive line. Obviously, Rodgers, Tyron Smith. I know they have backups in certain places, but it's just so many ifs all in a season where their GM and their coach both knows they're going to be fired if it doesn't go well. So that's too much. I think they'll be okay, and they'll stay in the mix, and they'll be dramatic. But they were on my list too. They were the one I was going to talk about. But I had two teams out too, so I also, by the way, will throw in the Dolphins just because offensive line, defensive line, the edges coming off injury, just a little too much.
So we're gonna. This is I promise, because I went through. Your producer did a brilliant job. Sent me a really thorough rundown, so I know what's coming. And I anticipate we're gonna have more disagreements later. But we had the same two out, the same two in. The Dolphins. Can I give? I don't know. Can I give a quick Dolphins?
You can do whatever you want. Nick, you know.
This is the year. So I have. I like Mike McDaniel. I think he's sharp. I think he's a good coach. I also personally have graded him in Miami on a bit of a curve. The curve being, man, look at what he's doing with Tua, who I think's a limited player. The moment he signed off on them giving Tua $53 million, I'd made a decision in my head. I'm removing that curve. Like now you are telling the world that you think this guy's top flight quarterback. And you can say it wasn't his decision, whatever. So in my head now, it's like, No, now you're graded the way people graded.
It's his decision, though. It was his,
Yes.
like he showed up there and he made it, and he's made that work. Weirdly, Tua is kind of not the least of my concerns, but Mike McDaniel, Tua as a combo, to me, that works. That works to be a playoff team. It's everything. There's other things. I think I'm grading him on a curve because he's the Dolphins coach. Very similar to anyone who's a Jets coach. I just feel like organizationally, structurally, there's a reason why these teams haven't won.
And I think that I think that your point on the defense is a great one. I know this is called NFL Daily, but I think if it had a subtitle, it might be called, where the regular OBJ report. I really appreciate that you've covered that story when the rest of the media
you're in my head though, because I realized after doing the Cut Down Day show with Silva, I was like, why am I leading with OBJ? I just keep talking about OBJ. I think it's just
you're interested.
It's my old blogger mentality from around the NFL days. It's like, well, you got to lead with Terrell Pryor or OBJ because everyone's into it. Like they really do sell,
But it is. But I guess the point that the point I'm making is while it has maybe been a little more focused than I would have expected for the whole league. Your point that they signed him because they expected I don't want to say they needed him because they have Tyreek and Waddle, but the offense they want to run, they want to have three guys out there and they want to threaten the defense in those ways. And I think it's on the board. He plays, let me set it like this. I am a gambler. If you set his over-under for catches as a Dolphin at 24.5, I would say I think that's a good number.
Yeah, I agree. That's about right. I was expecting you to say something in the 30s, and I was going to go under, but 24 is about right.
Yeah.
All right, let's go best division race. Just pick one. Which one you're most into?
To me, it depends on how you slice it. If you want a division where I think three teams theoretically could win it, I would say the South, but I think the best division race is the North. Because I think the Bengals are going to be excellent. And I think the Ravens are going to... One of the things that I have tried to hammer on the TV show is that during the year, when a team surprises or a team's doing well, we always be like, man, that coordinator. We give a lot of credit to coordinators when it's happening. Bobby Slowick, the guy in Detroit, sorry, that everybody loves, Ben Johnson. You know what I mean? Last year, Mike McDonald. We're
Anarumo
wow.
back in the day.
Anarumo up until last season. Spags in Kansas City. We always do it. When those guys leave, though, it totally removes from our analysis. When last year, nobody said about the Eagles, man, they're going to miss Shane Steichen. But during the year when they were awesome, people were like, Shane Steichen. So that's part of my, not that I think the Ravens are going to be bad, but part of my Ravens analysis is I think they're going to miss Mike McDonald. You had so many guys who I thought were near the end of their career or just, middling players be monsters. And that to me is usually scheme. And so I think that the Ravens come down a bit, the Bengals come up a bit, and I think that is a division race that will come down to the final week of the year and be massive because that's the type of one where the winner of that can end up the 2 seed. And then obviously the loser is on the road the whole playoff. So that's the one I'm most interested in.
That's probably the most important one. You're right. Just from a who's going to win the Super Bowl perspective, because I think they'd be on the short list. We did a power rankings a couple of days ago and they were both near the top. So that makes sense to me. I'm also just curious, will it be like the haves and the have-nots in that division? I went with AFC South, though, to me, because I do think the Colts, like, their ceiling is just much higher than people give credit for. I can't go all the way there. I still like the Texans better. And yet, I think if you play this season out 10 times, like, there's a few scenarios where the Colts are the 2 seed with 13 wins, 12 wins. I don't think people really, see them that way, because I don't see why they wouldn't have that high of an upside, because the defensive line is nasty. It's exciting. The defense could be a legitimately exciting defense because of their front. They have some continuity. And the offensive line's fantastic. And again, I always like which teams are the best on the lines, plus a quarterback, plus a coach. Like, to me, they're up there with the Texans. Now, I kind of don't see that scenario happening. Richardson's probably going to be too up and down. The division's tough, but you throw in the Jags, who, I couldn't quite get there as the team as my last playoff team. But I do think all three of those teams have really good quarterbacks and they're really talented, and that it's a breath of fresh air to have an AFC South that I'm totally into watching every game.
I
agree. It hasn't been that way.
I almost feel cliche though, because I agree with you entirely about the optimism about Richardson, but it does feel I am aware of my own biases, and so if someone were to be Nick, you're starting an NFL team, you can pick between these three quarterbacks. Tua Tagovailoa, who has led the league in passing and put up amazing numbers. Brock Purdy, who's been to an NFC Championship game and a Super Bowl and has the highest passer rating in NFL history. Or Anthony Richardson, who's played 9 quarters of pro football. I'd be like, I'll take the big, strong guy.
Yeah.
and so I recognize that there he is. It feels to me like he has such upside that it's exciting. But he felt like a bit of an unknown at Florida. And now a year into the NFL, what we saw was enticing. But yeah, those were the two divisions I was thinking about. So I'm with you on a lot of that.
Yeah, the ceiling is also partly on Steichen that he made it work. He had a pretty
they were a
effective
pass
offense
away
with
with
Minshew.
Yeah.
Right, and if Richardson can stay healthy and they just lean into the run, Eagles style, they could be dangerous. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to be back. We're going to predict the number 1 seed. We'll get to all the playoff rankings in just a second. All right, we are back on NFL Daily, and we've reached the portion of the program where Nick admits his own biases. That's that he knows his own biases. And we'll have to test that. I don't know if we really can be sure of that. But I have to admit, I would not be biased if you say what I think you're going to say to my next question, which is who's the number 1 seed
in the
AFC? Yeah.
You can't.
How lucky are you?
Oh,
not just to be a Chiefs fan, but to be where you are and to be a Chiefs fan. How much of your success is because of Patrick Mahomes directly? I would.
This is a great. If I may talk about myself for a moment, because there is a narrative out there in some corners of the internet that I owe my success to the 2 greatest American athletes ever, LeBron James and Patrick Mahomes. You just said these guys are awesome a lot, and now you have a TV show.
Michael Phelps just
what? Oh, you don't get me started on swimming gold medals. How many would Usain Bolt have if they're
no, I don't even want to go there. I don't believe in this argument. I have to admit,
thank you.
I don't believe in it.
Okay. So now, and what I would say is we have this incredibly populated sports media, sports take landscape. And everyone is at different times fighting over the same corners. And for the LeBron thing, I was just fortunate enough to see earlier than most, it's not, is he going to be better than Jordan? He already is. So I said that a bunch, and then it's hey, he's the LeBron guy. I'm okay, cool, I'll take it. And then the guy never retires, so it helps. I'm from Kansas City. I was at the Lynn Elliott game as a child, getting frostbite. I had my first foray into media was being Nick the Kid on Bill Grigsby's post-game call-in show at 10 years old, calling in from the parking lot after every home game.
Really?
Yes, that's
maybe
true.
It's not too early to get Walker in the mix.
Yeah, there you go. I remind people that I was born in 1984, and the first quarterback in my lifetime, drafted by the Chiefs in my lifetime to win a game for the Chiefs, was Patrick Mahomes. They had not had a quarterback they drafted win a game from my birth to 1984, because Blackledge was the last one to do it. He was drafted in 83. So this idea that like, oh, it's been this blessed life of a Chiefs fan is
no,
nonsense.
It's not a blessed life. It's just that the rise of Mahomes happened to coincide
so now,
with your own,
correct.
and you've enjoyed it. You know,
so now to get back to the sports take point I was making, I did have the wherewithal to recognize, seems like in my business, the national sports television business, everyone is fighting over the same corner, and it's the Cowboys corner. So what if I just say, you know what? Unlike Marlo Stanfield, I don't want all the corners. You guys have that one. And I will fortify the Chiefs corner and make it very clear that's my goddamn corner and no one can take it. And then they ended up becoming the greatest dynasty. Well, they will. Sorry to your Patriots here in about 5 months when they win their third straight Super Bowl. The greatest dynasty ever. And I just get to be along for the ride. So that's all. That's all that it is.
You're not the only one on that corner. I mean, in fairness, if you go back and listen to the Around the NFL podcast back in the day, we were debating like hell before the Chiefs won their first Super Bowl on this podcast. Is Patrick Mahomes the greatest quarterback I've ever seen? Literally. Yes. It was before he even won his first Super Bowl. And I was in that argument. I was just like, well, you can only judge him on what we've seen. The first 2 seasons are the greatest 2 seasons I've ever seen easily. And the only other person that could possibly be in contention would be Dan Marino. And I don't feel I can speak to it as much. But through 2 seasons, he's the greatest quarterback I've ever seen. And
now through 6.
I had a lot of pushback then. And then after year 3, this is the greatest quarterback we've ever seen. After year 4, like I've said that throughout, we got to cover all 32 teams. It also gets annoying and it almost becomes obvious. So I don't think you can question it that much. This season's interesting with them though, because I actually feel like I haven't been down on them going to the last 2 seasons. I had them in the Super Bowl, but there were just more doubts on paper about them. This year, it's hard to find any doubts. The schedule, maybe the defense takes a step back. Everything is just set up for them. The biggest doubts to me, and it's why, spoiler alert, I'm not going to pick them to win the Super Bowl this year or even make it, is just something ineffable of like they're going to get picked off. That there's a reason why it's so hard, but I'm still picking them as my number 1 seed. I'm just saying like they're going to have a great regular season. They're going to have a great season. The Patriots had some seasons where they peaked almost a little too early. Everything was perfect. And it's just so hard to get through every year. And it's hard to define why or why that would happen.
So I agree with that entirely. And obviously, single elimination tournament things can happen. I would argue that when I hear a lot of people say similar things, which is nobody's doubting how good they are, but eventually the ball's going to bounce wrong for wrong for them. I would argue that happened last year and they won anyway. And so 2 years ago in the playoffs, Patrick Mahomes suffered a high ankle sprain. And they won anyway. He suffered a significant injury. They won anyway. Last year, they fumbled the ball at the goal line against Buffalo. Everyone now in the revisionist history in a game the Chiefs were leading by 10 points in the 4th quarter have decided Zay Flowers' fumble cost the Ravens the game. As if that was
Stephon Diggs' drop, that sticks out too.
Right.
You're right though. The Bills at that point should not have been in that game. I agree with that.
Correct. And so like there were the moments that were those like, oh my God, it went the wrong way for you moments might have happened and they got by. And so I just think this year they are so much better than they were each of the last 2 years. And I think Snead's an excellent player and they will miss him. And that to me, if people are looking for a weakness on the Chiefs, I think the secondary is going to be a work in progress over the course of the year. They're playing a lot of young guys and guys that aren't necessarily, fully ready. I think the safeties will be good. The corners could be a problem. But the Mahomes, let me say one other thing about the Chiefs that I think the NFL did the Ravens a disservice by putting them in that week 1 game.
I agree.
I just feel like that it is such. The Ravens had such a great season, and then they have their worst game of the year and they lose to the Chiefs. If this year then starts like that, no matter what they do over the next 4 months, I just feel like psychologically it's going to be like, well, damn it. So I thought if I were a Baltimore fan, maybe that's because I think the Chiefs are going to win. The flip side is if the Ravens win that game, then it's like, hey, monkey off our back at least a little bit. But
I just was on the radio with my friend Glenn Clark in Baltimore, and at least the way he says it, I think it's kind of copium there. They're like, that game stinks because we're going to, even if we win it, like no one's going to think it matters because nothing matters now except for the playoffs. So that's why I thought it shouldn't
be week 1. But okay.
I agree. I wanted that game to be Texans. It made more sense. The NFL, look, they've been out front with it. They decided this strategy of they're going to front load this season for whatever reason. They wanted to go big and get the most monster ratings possible the first 3 weeks of the season. But the schedule for the Chiefs after the beginning, when they do have at San Francisco, they have the Bengals early. It's just too easy. They're going to be fine. I disagree, though, that they're much better because their defense can't be better. And
that's fair.
Menahue's out, and they'll just be closer to average. But they were freaking 15th in points scored last year, and that's never going to happen again with Patrick Mahomes. So that'll make up for anything. All right, these can be quick. First QB to be benched. There's a few options. Jacoby Brissett, Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson you could throw in there. Gardner Minshew, who you go with? So
I'm going to get this wrong because I don't consider Jacoby Brissett, Gardner Minshew as like real. I don't consider those benchings. You know what I mean? So I'm going.
Honestly, Jacoby might not even make it to week 1. I've had this hunch that Gerard Mayo wants to start Drake May and nobody else does. And that's just my hunch. And he's the head coach. So does he just put his foot down and say, sorry, Alex Van Pelt, you're not the coach here.
So I'm going to say Deshaun Watson.
Okay. That's bold.
Because that's a real benching. And I don't think he can play anymore. I think that there are psychological reasons, physical reasons, and just too long away from the game reasons. And I found the Jameis Winston acquisition interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Because they had Huntley, who's a Mac Jones Memorial Pro Bowler on his Wikipedia page. And that
was a weird one, yeah.
And who's the other guy?
DTR. They say they're not trading DTR, who's a solid young backup prospect.
But so my point is, like, we live in a world where there are teams that have 2 quarterbacks and one of them is Malik Willis. Like you had Huntley and DTR. You didn't need to go get Jameis as a backup, but maybe you thought you needed Jameis as a starter.
Yeah, they're not blind. He's not healthy right now, Deshaun Watson still. And that's a good choice. I just think they'll be stuck on keeping him going. I'll go Russell Wilson there, partly because of what Rap Sheet said on our show. He made it sound like, okay, I think maybe Fields has convinced some people in the building. Let's go with the coach first, if any, coach in the AFC to get fired.
All right, so do you dream about the show you do sometimes?
Now I do. I never did before, but now that it's
every day,
yeah, I do. I actually have dreamed about the show every day this week. It's funny you say this.
So I also wear nicotine patches. I've worn nicotine patches for 17 years. I don't know if that's really the way it's supposed to go, but it's what I've done. And I sleep with them on, which again, I don't know if that's healthy, but it keeps your brain moving. So I sometimes have a dream that's very specific. Sometimes there's even stats involved, and it's stuff that is accurate, and I use it on the show. So Wilds makes fun of me when I talk about this. He's like, we don't want to hear about your dreams, man. And I'm like, I'm not saying they're premonitions. I just think they're good ideas. So I had a dream that Robert Saleh got fired and Nat Hackett got to be the interim head coach.
I mean, the second part of that is definitely never happening, but that is
What do you mean it's never happening? If they fire Robert Saleh during the year,
all right.
Who is I know who Rodgers would advocate for, and it seems like he's in charge. We can say it's never happening, and I don't know the Jets' full coaching staff.
I'm looking it up right now because I'm just trying to find someone. Well, yeah, Ulbrich, who was kind of impressive in that Hard Knocks thing.
Todd Downing. I don't know.
My initial instinct was, who is the just oldest guy that has respect but really isn't cut out for it? Sean Jefferson has been a coach for 20 years in the NFL. He's their wide receivers coach. Yeah. I don't know. It'd be a guy like that. But you're right. Okay. They don't really have anyone else.
They don't have the only guy with head coaching experience.
They can't.
they can't. And I just don't think I think the Jets are going to stumble out of the gates.
Ooh, that's fun.
And so I don't know I'm trying to think of the other possible options.
There's not really many in the AFC. There's actually coaches that have no worry, and then there's new coaches. So Doug Peterson was probably the one I was going to throw out there, just if things go sour. I don't think they will go sour. I think they'll actually have a winning record if I had to choose. But I think if they were 2-6 or 2-5, that he'd be dangerous.
Peterson's really now.
Maybe they'll leave him in London. I'll be there, by the way. You mentioned Jags in London earlier, so that's a little breaking news. I'm going to go see the Prince versus Caleb Williams, so that's going to be fun.
What a game! Are you going to stick around for the next week to see him against your Patriots?
I am not, unfortunately. I can only get the finances or whatnot, the approval for one game, but I'll take it. Believe me, I will take it.
But just real quick on this topic, it is interesting that in the AFC, it feels like you just go division by division, take out the guy I mentioned, Robert Saleh. The other, I guess McDermott theoretically could be fired during the year if they're awful, but that's not going to happen. Feels like the rest of the AFC, in the AFC North, all four are 100% safe during the year, feels to me. Stefanski just won Coach of the Year again. In the AFC South, Peterson's the only one who could be fired during the year.
Yeah.
And in the AFC West, I think all four are 100% safe during the year. Like Antonio Pierce, I just don't think you're going to hire an interim coach. And then obviously Sean Payton, Jim Harbaugh, and Andy Reid aren't. The NFC has way more coaches.
Way more.
And
now Dennis Allen is, I actually read something about this, that initially this offseason, Robert Saleh was the Vegas favorite to be first coach fired, which seems crazy to me. But now, because so many people put their money on Dennis Allen is, we'll go through these quick and then we'll get to our seeds. Halfway decent team that gets talked about the least on your show, First Things First.
Well,
you can take this however you want. If you want to just say any team, you can say
no.
Any
that's
team.
fine.
It could be a bad team. It could be the Titans because the Titans probably.
No. You said halfway decent. I think the answer is the Colts.
Okay.
Because I think the Colts are a lot of what you said. I agree with. The other one that I think could be halfway decent this year is the Broncos.
That was the one that popped to my mind. That I don't love this team, but their over/under's 5.5, and it's Sean Payton. They'll probably scrape close enough to 800 or 500, and they might not get mentioned for weeks on First Things First.
That's correct. And
Kevin Wildes, by the way, great find. I would have never, not that you found him, but a delight.
Brilliant.
Kevin Wildes.
No, Kevin Wildes is, I think, the best at what he does, which is a very specific thing in the business. The only person to me similar to Wildes in skill set and ability is actually a guy you already mentioned on the show in Lefko. A guy who can, host and have takes and be funny and just universally likable. But yeah, the one other bonus Broncos take. I think Bo Nix is the most likely guy to trick people into thinking he's good.
Yes.
So I think that there is a lot of Mac Jones rookie season for Bo Nix where it's like you reach your ceiling immediately and it's kind of training wheel stuff and it's like, hey, look at him. Look at what he's going to be. But it's actually just that the whole time because he's 29 years old.
I was tricked. But if Mac Jones had
I wasn't trying to take a shot at you.
No. But I was tricked because first of all, Mac Jones didn't stay at that level. Obviously, the things around it. Like, if he could have just stayed at that level, he could have had a real career.
Been fine.
He could not stay
Maybe
at that
he's back to it. Preseason.
Maybe, but if you watch
he won the
those
2024 Kenny Pickett Award.
There were some. Yeah, he had a lot of numbers and highlights, but if you watch those games, he had some Mac Jones moments too that were like, okay, that's why you're back. All right, one last quick break, and then we're gonna go through our seeds and our pick for the championship game. back on NFL Daily. An inspiration as I've gotten used to these daily shows and thinking, okay, it's a lot planning and every day.
It's a lot, man.
I do think about the Good Morning Football people and what they've been through the last however many years. And then I think of people like Nick Wright, who have a daily TV show, which I know personally takes a different sort of energy out of you, takes more out of you, frankly. And then on top of that, you then go do your YouTube show. So I'm like, if they can do it, and now that once I got used to it and into the flow of it, I was like, okay, this is quite doable.
It's also, let me tell you, I don't know, again, this is a little psychological, I guess. I have found I really enjoy now, like, building Legos and doing puzzles. And the reason is, just follow me for a moment, is because I like when I finish something, there to be proof of it. One of the weird things about a daily show is no matter how, one of the good things is if you think it was awful, it's like, well, I get to do it again tomorrow. One of the bad things is, and I've just done daily radio or TV or both for now, gosh, almost 20 years, or I guess 17 years, is you do all this work, you get to do all this prep, you get everything ready, and then it's just gone. Just like into the ether. You know what I mean? So like just psychologically, it's like, oh, I did this project and now it's sitting on my mantle. Not that I build a lot of Legos that then we display in the house, but you understand the point that I'm making. Yeah, it's a weird thing in your head.
Yeah, I've been doing ephemeral stuff forever. I mean, I was doing Roto-World. You got to just enjoy the actual doing of it, and that for me is the reward, because none of this stuck. Like Roto-World player news, that does not stick. My PFT posts, all the things I wrote on PFT because they messed it up now are under someone else's name, and I always get like tweets that I wrote some incendiary thing from 2009, and it was actually Mike Florio that wrote it, but for some reason my name's on it because they messed it up, and so everything's ephemeral. Nothing I wrote has ever stuck, and that's I'm fine with that because it's a fun life. All right, let's wrap up with the most important stuff, our 7 playoff seeds, and then we'll also after that go with our championship result, because maybe the seeds don't match up the same as what the championship game is. Yep. Why don't you go from 7 to 1? You can start.
7 to 1. All right, so I want to get this exactly right, because there is nothing I dislike more and judge folks more for in our space, where if on one platform they have X and then on another platform they have Y, because it's either you weren't paying attention and didn't care, or you're actually trying to hedge. You're like the guy who fills out 7 March Madness brackets so he can be like, I had that upset. So I'm checking my official document, Nick Wright 2024.
You're not
NFL
allowed. The
gambling.
tricky part is you might change your mind between now and the season, but
no, it's locked in stone.
You can't
locked
do
in
it.
stone.
Okay.
7 seed, Los Angeles Chargers.
Same.
6 seed, Jacksonville Jaguars. Do you want to say yours?
No, I want to go through yours.
Oh, okay, got it. 5 seed, Baltimore Ravens.
Okay.
4 seed, Houston Texans. 3 seed, Buffalo Bills. 2 seed, Cincinnati Bengals. And the number 1 seed, the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, I think it was harder to get overly creative in the AFC. None of those will shock me. I am pleased, and I don't know if surprise is the word, but that you stuck with the Bills. I guess I could have figured it out because you went Dolphins and Jets earlier, but why are you thinking the Bills, who have just had a strange run here under Josh Allen? They just are very streaky. There's always a point in the season where it looks like things are going to crater, and then by the end they're usually the second best team or the third best team, which is frustrating for the Bills, but also to me is extremely impressive because as a Patriots fan, I think that's the hardest thing to do. And the Bills have basically done it. They just have done it in an era where Patrick Mahomes is there and they haven't, quite gotten over the hump.
So this is, I'm glad we're having a chance to talk about the Bills, because I understand people, might look at me as a Chiefs guy, but there are other people that have been close to, if not just as correct about the Chiefs over the last few years as me. No one
right here. I didn't pick against them once in the playoffs for a couple.
There
years.
you go. Exactly right. no one has been more accurate about the Buffalo Bills than me. And I have been ridiculed, called a hater, called a hot take artist, all these things when it's just been correct. And I reject the premise that other people have, and I think you might be one of them, like, you ran into Michael Jordan, you ran into the Chiefs, because the fact of the matter is, there is not a single game the Bills have played the Chiefs in the playoffs that you have real evidence had they won, they would have then won the Super Bowl.
Oh,
there isn't one.
The 2022, right? You know, the overtime game. Yeah, I was convinced they would have won the Super Bowl.
Okay,
they were better than the Bengals and the Rams.
Okay, well, that's interesting because the very next year, they then hosted the Bengals and
they were a different team
rocked.
then. They were a different team. That was their best team, and it didn't happen for them, and it is. And look, they deserve it because they're a defensive coach, and everything's about to be the consistency of their defense, and Sean McDermott's peed down his leg, and their defense has played the very worst in the biggest moments. And so
100%.
They deserve to lose it, but they were, if they had found the way to win that game with one more stop, I felt like they were winning that Super Bowl. That was a bad team Super Bowl, relatively, Bengals Rams.
I understand, but the point that I'm making is that's the one everyone goes to. And that season, they lost to a team that then lost to the team that lost the Super Bowl.
You know how it happens, though.
I do. I just think it's, for a team that has 3 consecutive 7th place finishes, they've sure been talked about in a lot of Super Bowls. But that's not the point. The reason is, despite that, I now think people have overcorrected. And people are now underrating them. A healthy Josh Allen, you have a baseline of 9 or 10 wins. And I think that even though they have a lot of defensive personnel losses, they were without Milano for a lot of last year. I think the guys in the secondary weren't still great players. They were good players, but not great players. And Diggs, whether it was because of personality or age or whatever, after the first 5 games of last year, was not a top 40 receiver. And so I just think that I think they're going to be fine. I think that they are going to be what they have been, in my opinion, each of the last few years, which is a good regular season team that when it is all firing looks like, oh my God, that team's amazing, that then plays a true contender in the playoffs and loses. And so that's just how I am, but now we're in a world where they're not even the favorite to win their own division. So I think now the Bills are being disrespected by Vegas when previously they have been way overly respected, which is good for me because it just means, once again, I get to be right down the middle about the Buffalo Bills.
I'm with you, and I'm high on the Bills this year. Partly, maybe I'm just pushing against that, but I do believe it, that it was the same reason why I picked the Chiefs in 2022 to make the Super Bowl, and I think to win the Super Bowl. Actually, no, before the year I had Eagles over Chiefs. That was right. I got it wrong, but I had the matchup right, which is that does not happen.
That's right.
But it's because offensive line and quarterback, like, I'm not making it that complicated. And there's enough of everything else. And I think this is the best Bills offensive line they've had. It just has good continuity. And I do think Josh Allen, he's never going to be better than Patrick Mahomes overall. But I do think we're right about the point we're getting the very best Josh Allen. And I do think he can lift all the tides. And I wanted, like, I think there was a point in the offseason where I probably thought I'd be more creative and not as high on the Texans, because it's like, oh, everyone's going to be high on the Texans. But they deserve it. They really are that good. They really do have a chance. And so I have them up there winning the division. I'll go through mine too, and then we can talk our championship results. So 7 Chargers, I'm with you. Didn't feel great about it, but I had to go somewhere. 6 Colts, I do have them in the playoffs. So I have 2 AFC South teams. 5 Bengals, 4 Texans, 3 Ravens. I have a weird feeling about the Ravens, and yet when it comes down to it, I just can't pick against them. 2 Bills, and then number 1
2
Chiefs.
Bills.
Wow. Yeah. Why not?
I
mean,
no, that's
they're
fine.
the most consistent regular season team, and there's a lot of, like, I think Rousseau could have a breakout season. Every year I think Ed Oliver is going to have a breakout season, except what he does is improve like 10% every season, which is fine. Like he improves from very
Yeah,
good
just-
to like
yeah.
closer. Now he's like Pro Bowl, and that's fine. If you have two good defensive linemen, McDermott knows how to coach up the back seven, which to me is just so valuable. Even if he's, holds the, as we would say in tennis, like he holds the racket a little too tight. Like he just that worries me in a playoff setting. But that's my playoffs, and I might as well just go to it. Yeah, I have the Bills in the Super Bowl this year. I'm going Bills over Texans. I'm gonna actually, because the Chiefs freak me out. I guess in this scenario, the Texans pick off the Chiefs.
So that's what Brew did last year. Brew had Ravens over Bengals in the AFC title game, but his logic was the Bengals beat the Chiefs for the Ravens.
Yes,
and then they go.
I'm going that way because I really do. It's more of a bet against the Chiefs in the sense that this is the best AFC I've seen. I think there's going to be 4 to 5 really great teams. Yeah. And so I take the field over the Chiefs. And if I'm going to take the field over the Chiefs, this is the first time I haven't had them in a Super Bowl before a season in a while.
Also,
maybe
can
almost
I just tell
ever.
You something, Greg?
Yeah.
Because you're my friend and I love this show. It's one thing to not pick the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
It's another thing not pick the Chiefs to make the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
But the Chiefs season the Chiefs, since Mahomes have been there, they have a 1 or 2 game season. And it starts in the AFC title game. And if they go 2-0, it's a great year. If they go 1-1, it's a sad year.
I mean, what? So the Bills overtime game was a preseason game? I mean, give me a break. You don't know when your tough games are going to come.
No. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is 100% of the time when the AFC Championship game trophy is in the building and the winner of that game gets it, Patrick Mahomes is playing in that game.
That's why I'm not allowing him to get to that game.
But you're saying that he won't play in it. You're saying
that's why if he gets there, I actually do.
But he doesn't
now maybe
always
it's the
win
Patriots.
That game. He's
maybe
lost
it's
that
the
game
Patriots
twice.
fan in me that recognizes how great this Chiefs run is and is going to be, and they have a chance to be better than the Patriots. It'll be different because that was 20 years, and who knows? Yeah. We'll see. But they have a chance to be better over a shorter period of time this year. Right now, there's almost an argument they already have. I do think those divisional round games sometimes are the toughest. You've come off of a little of a bye, and the other team maybe has played in this scenario, and they're fantastic. So I do think it's just as likely that the Texans beat them as some other team, and that it's that first game and that it could happen. And I just want it to be a little more fun and throw this great Texans team into a big spot.
Listen, I like the Texans, and they should pop. And there's a pretty decent history of this is how you do it. Everybody knows the rookie contract quarterback, load the team up, go. Got it. I think having by your predictions, the Chiefs are going to win 0 playoff games. And I think that's lunacy.
Why? It happens. It's happened
it's
all
literally
the time in NFL history where the best team loses. And sometimes it happens.
I'm not talking about
right
NFL
away.
History. I'm talking about Patrick Mahomes' history. And I'm just saying it's never happened to him.
But that's not gonna. You do understand as a Chiefs fan that will not continue his whole career. There will be games like this. There will be seasons like this.
Yeah, but I don't think this is the year. Also, if I'm not mistaken, your Patriots did make 8 consecutive AFC title games, so that's doable. 2011 to 2018, you guys were in 8 straight AFC title games, and since part of Mahomes' legacy is going to be to break all of your guys' records, I guess he's going to have to go to 9.
I always said that was the
most impressive thing.
It's hard to pick, but that was, at the time it felt, and why I always thought 2014 was the most satisfying, because they were so good for that decade that they were sneaky the best team in NFL history not to win a Super Bowl for a decade. Was the 2005 through 2013 Patriots. And so it was great to get off of that. And I don't know if the Chiefs I don't think they'll ever have that long of a stretch without Mahomes. And yet I still would take the under, and this is a whole other podcast. I would take the under of Mahomes getting to 6 or 7, whichever one you want to use, whether it's Patriots or Brady.
No,
I would take the under just because football is hard.
You have to take the under. If the number's 6.5, you have to take the under. With that said, it couldn't have started better. I didn't give mine. Chiefs over Bengals.
Okay,
and
that makes sense.
And that this whole, because the Chiefs have ended the Bengals season in consecutive years. Last year, nobody cares because it was Jake Browning, but they did do it. And for 3 straight years, I think that would be good. And I really like the Bengals and Burrow. And I am worried if they don't win the Super Bowl this year, they being the Bengals, when they're going to have a great opportunity again in the short order, because it does seem like ownership might be messing this up a bit. And that I don't understand the Jamar Chase thing at all. I get the T. Higgins thing. I get it. But the T. Higgins thing only made sense because it's like, we can't pay you because we're about to give Jamar all this money. To do the T. Higgins thing and then not give Jamar all the money is baffling to me. Baffling.
Yeah, and their top level talent on defense, and we'll see. Maybe Amarius Mims turns that to the offense. Where is it? I'm with you that this is kind of their year. I think I spent most of the offseason thinking I'm gonna either pick the Bengals or the Bills to win the Super Bowl. That this feels like it's gonna be one of their years, and I just settled on the Bills. It can't be.
It'll happen eventually.
Give me both.
It'll happen eventually. I just think that the laser focus on a three-peat and potentially letting Travis walk off into the sunset, everyone's going to be lost. But we'll see.
I appreciate you, Nick Wright. Again, FS1, first things first, noon Pacific, 3 Eastern. What's Right with Nick Wright. Check out the podcast. It's a YouTube show. This was a pleasure. It's a daily show, so I do want to have you back on at some point. Maybe this is an off-season show where we compare who's going to have a better career. Carlos Alcaraz, your guy. I do love that you're pumping up Alcaraz on a national stage. We need more tennis talk. Or right. Mahomes. I mean, that's an interesting
I was at the real quick before we go, because you'll love this. So yesterday, I'm texting with Greg about today's show, and he just texts me, go Alcaraz or something.
Yeah, enjoy watching. Like, I said, in the meantime, we can watch some Alcaraz. I figured on TV. I know you're a big fan.
And I was like, how the hell? I was in my car on my way to the U.S. Open. I was like, how the hell did he know? I was like, did I say it on the air? Like, I don't know. So I get to the U.S. Open like 15 minutes after the match starts and just buy upper level seats for Alcaraz. For like $80. And I'm watching. The kid qualifier, it looks like he's going to win the second set. And I'm like, all right, now we might have a real match. I'm in the stadium. I've already paid for tickets. I go on a ticketing app and see 4th row sideline right where you serve. There are tickets still for sale, but now it's 8:30. So those tickets, which were $2,200 earlier in the day, we're down to $200 a seat. In the stadium, I bought 2 tickets just so I could move down and watch from there. And me and Mark Carman and Danny Parkins went down and watched from the 4th row. It was great. I love the U.S. Open. I'll be back on Sunday.
Live tennis. I'm very happy with my life here in Los Angeles and my family. The thing that happens every year, this time of year, that I wish I was having my old life when I lived in New York for 10 years. I would love to be doing a football show and heading up to Flushing a handful of times during this U.S. Open. Nick Wright can do that. And like I said, check him out every day on his shows. We will be back with an NFC preview on Friday, wrapping up the week. Big time, big show. Jordan Rodrigue, Steve Weish, and a new guest, new co-host, Keegan Abdu, who does next-gen stats for us. So it's a big packed studio. We'll do the NFC preview before the week is up. We'll see you then.